Hello there, fashion designers. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, you're welcome, and if you are a returning subscriber or viewer, thank you so much for tuning in again. So in today's video, I'll be showing you an easy guide on how to cut a cupped corset with a yoke, a perfectly drafted yoke. In this video, I made a 2-piece cut for the cup. I have another video on when I made a 3-piece cut, so you can check it out. I'll leave the link above or in the comment section, so you can do well to check it out. And before I release another sewing video on this cupped corset, I also have a video on how to sew a corset. Alright, so I'm also going to leave the link above and also on the comment section. Alright, so I showed you the A to Z process of sewing a cupped corset on that video. So let's get right into drafting it. So first, I'm going to go ahead to draw my starting line just like this, and next we'll go for our horizontal lines, which is 9.5 inches for my nipple point, 12.5 inches for my under bust, 17 inches for my waist, please take note, and then 23.5 inches for the blouse length. So I'll just go ahead to draw lines just like this and also label them so that we can identify it. Next, from my waistline, I'm going to go down by 4 inches. Okay, if I've watched my previous video, you know what that is. That's our corset line. So if you are size 6, use 3 inches, but for size 8, size 10 upward, make use of 4 inches. Okay, 4 inches from your waistline will be okay for your corset line. On my shoulder line, I'm going to mark 7.5 inches for my shoulder and then 3 inches for my neckline. On the shoulder line, I'll then go down by 0.75 inches and then I'll connect it together to the neckline just like this. Now for my shoulder slope, I'll go down by 7.5 inches, which is my chest line. You can achieve your chest line by dividing your bust by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So I'll go ahead to make the horizontal line just like this, and then I'll label it chest line so that we can identify what it is. Still on this line here, I'm going to divide what I have by 2, and then I'll go out by 0.5 inch. So I'll connect it together to the shoulder line just like this, and then to complete my armhole curve, I'm going to go ahead to take my bust measurement, which is 8.5 inches. So I'll just go ahead to use the curved part of my roll to connect it together just like this. So this corset has a yoke, so therefore I'm going to make use of 7.5 inches for our yoke. I'll be showing you how to draft a yoke for this cupped corset as well. So I'm making use of 7.5 inches for my yoke. So next, we are going to divide my nipple to nipple into 2. This is what I'm trying to show you here. Alright, and for me here is going to be 3.75 inches. So I'm going to take that from the yoke length down to the blouse length just like this. So after marking it out, I'm going to use my ruler to connect all the points together, and this is what we have. So for under bust snatching, I'm going to take 1 inch on the under bust and also on the waistline just like this. Then I'm going to connect it together. And also connect it down to the nipple point just like this. Please note that I didn't connect it down to the nipple point line exactly. I went down by 0.05 inches. Then on the blouse length, I'm going to go ahead to mark 0.5 inches on both sides just like this. And then I'll connect it to the line. So I'll go ahead to label that yoke part, which is our over bust line, so I'll identify what line is it. Okay, to continue our dart, I'm going to go ahead to mark 1 inch on both sides just like this. Then I'll just go ahead to connect it together with a curve roll like this. Please take note of how I'm joining it to the line. Okay, so at the end of the day, I'll take the measurement here. I have 2 inches. I'll take that same measurement here. We need to add that same measurement back on this line. We're going to be having a new armhole curve. I just go ahead to use a curve roll to connect it together like this. So for our cup at the center here, I'm going to go up by 1.25 inches, just like this. You can choose to go up by 1 inch if you want to, or 1.5, okay? But I'm trying to make sure that cleavages are not out and then the cup tends to cover the whole bustier. Now depending on how busted the person is. So and at this point I'm going to go out here by 0.75 inches. You can choose to use half inches if you want. So I'll just go ahead to use my marker and then connect it together just like this. Then next on my waistline, I'm going to take my waist measurement. So for the waist snatching, you can choose to snatch by 2 to 3 inches depending on how comfortable you want your client to be. So if your client's waist is 28 inches, you can snatch by 2 inches, making it 26 inches. And if you want to snatch by 3 inches, then your waist client will become 25 inches. So depending on what you want, this is a better way to calculate your waist. Determine what you want to snatch, minus it, and then you can divide it on your waist. All right, so yeah, I'm going to mark 6 inches for my waist. Afterwards, I will add 2 inches for the dart allowance and also 1 inches for another dart allowance, which I'm going to be taking after taking the full body measurement. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this. Now next, for our hip, we're not snatching our hip, so therefore you take your hip measurements. In fact, you can add half inch on the hip if you want to, okay, plus the dart allowance, which is 1 inch on this area. So just go ahead and then connect the lines together with my marker just like this. As much as possible, try to avoid pointed edge, okay, so as to have a perfect one. Next, I'm going to take my side dart and I'm going to go down by 1.25 inches and I'll connect it together. That's the difference between the front half length and the back half length. So next, I'm going to come to the side, that's my armhole area here, and I'll go out by 1 inch. Then I'll now come down by half inch, okay? This is to create ease at the side of your cupped corset. Go out by 1 inch and then you come down by half inch from your armhole curve. Remember, we have a new armhole curve, right? So that is where I took my measurements from. Make sure that you add your dart allowance to the side. So next, for my cup, I'm going to go ahead to use my curve ruler to connect it from what we drew here, just like this. Try to make sure that the lower part at the underbust area is a little bit flat, you know, like 0.25 inches away from the dart line. Let it be flat down. This is going to make your cup to sit well under the bust area. So I'll just go ahead to also, I've gone ahead as well to connect the upper part just like this. So that's what I'm trying to correct at this point, okay? It should be a little bit flat, not so pointed. So next, for the other side, I'm going to connect it to the old armhole which we had just like this, okay? The old armhole points, and then I'm going to just connect it like this with my marker to the new armhole curve, okay? So this is just a way that I do it which make it work better. So connect it to the previous armhole curve, right, and then you just give some distance away just like this. So next, I'm going to go ahead to fold in the side dart so as to create the last part of the curve. So I'll just connect it, the curve just like this down to that same, you know, old armhole curve that we first had. That's the initial bust point, okay? So it's good that your cup should have a little bit of space just like this. So I'll just use my marker and connect everything together. So this is what we have for the cup. Next, on the waist area here, I'm going to be dividing it by 2. Remember, I added 1 inches for another dart which I talked about. So I'm going to divide what I have here by 2, and then I'm going to create this line, okay, just from the other side, so as to have about 3 pieces. This is going to make, you know, the waist to be snatched. So we're just going to mark half inches and then connect it together just like this. So I'll go ahead to label my pattern. So we have the center front, middle front, and then the side, and also I'll go ahead to label the cup with 1 and 2. Okay, so it's very good you do this. And also at the corset line here, I'm going to go down by 0.25 inches to create a curve at the hem line. So I'm going to just connect them together just like this. Then next I'm going to go ahead to label our yoke. Now this is the yoke part. All right, so if you want to draft your yoke and you don't want to drape it, this is a perfect pattern for drafting your yoke. All right, so after having your cup just like this, then cut it out on whatever fabric you want to use for your yoke, and you're going to have a perfect yoke this way. So while I was trying to illustrate what I didn't know that my camera was not on at that time, so I'm going to explain to you what I did at this point. So I took my neckline, and afterwards I just used the marker to highlight the armhole curve that we had. Okay, that was what we have initially, not the new armhole curve. All right, because when you have taken your dart just like this, it's going to just fit in perfectly. So at that point I extended a little bit. Okay, that's it on how to draft the front panel. So next, let me go ahead to draft the back panel. First, I'm going to go ahead to mark my starting line just like this. Then next, I'm going to take my horizontal lines. So for here, I'm going to make use of my nipple point 9.5 inches. My waist is 15.75 inches. Okay, so just like what we did at the waistline, I'm going to come down by 4 inches to create our corset line. So I'll just go ahead and use my ruler to make the lines and as well label it. So on the starting line here, I'm going to measure 7.5 inches for our shoulder line and then 3 inches for the neckline, and I'll go down by 0.75 inches just like this to form our shoulder slope. So from that point we will take our chest line measurement, which is 7.5 inches, and then I'll just go ahead to create a straight line just like this and an horizontal line. Okay, so this is what we have. Next, we are going to create our armhole curve. So I'll divide what I have there by 2, and then I'll take my bust measurements to connect it together and form our armhole curve. So next, on the waist, I'm going to take my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 3.75 inches. I'll do that also on the nipple points down to the chest line to create a straight line just like this. So next, I'm going to draft our yoke. For our yoke, we measured 6.5 inches. Okay, so I'll just create our over bust line just like this, where the yoke will be starting. And then I also went ahead to extend the line to the over bust line just like this. So my waistline here, I'm going to take 1/2 inch for the darts on both sides, and then I'll go ahead to connect it to the nipple point just like this. So next, I'm going to go ahead to take our waist measurements, the same measurements that we took on the front panel. I'm going to take the same measurement to here. I'll go ahead to measure what we have here at the chest line. Remember, we took our hip on the blouse length. All right, so I'll go ahead to measure what I have at this chest line, just so I have a perfect measurement. Okay, these tips and tricks are very important. So I took the measurement away from the dart, calculating the dart out of it. Okay, and then I marked the same thing on this part. So afterwards, I went ahead and then connected together down to my bust point. So this is what we have. So also for the waist snatching, I'm going to take another dart. So I'll divide what I have here by 2, and then I'm going to mark 1/2 inches on both sides just like this. And I'll do the same thing and connect it down to the nipple point just like this. So like I said, try to avoid sharp points. So next, on this point, just like what we did for the front panel, I'm going to come down by 1/2 inch at this point here, and then I'm going to now create a straight line just like this. Okay, so at the end of the day, we are going to have the same thing at the side of this back panel and the same thing at the front side of the back panel. Okay, so for our eyelets, I'm going to go ahead to mark 1.5 inches at this upper area here, and then 1 inches at the lower area here. So I'm just going to make this markings here for us to identify that that's where our eyelet is going to be. So at this point here, I went up by 0.25 inches, and then at the center back I went down by 0.25 inches, then connect it together just like we did for the front panel. Okay, so next I will just go ahead to label it. I have my center back, the middle, and then the side. Okay, I'll also go ahead to also put some arrows just like this to identify the upper part of your corset and the lower part. This is very important. So for the back neckline, okay, you can choose to do whatever if you want to, but take note that there's space at the back for your eyelets. You need to give that space. So I'm just going to go ahead. I went down by 1 inch here, and then measured another 1 inch to connect it down to this dart area. Okay, so our highlights will be there and our boning, and we are not going to be sewing. It's not going to be okay to sew on our boning, so I'm just going to do this keyhole neckline, okay, for the back. So this is what we have. I just got to use my marker to highlight it so that we can identify it. So here is our yoke, here's the front pattern. I'm bringing it just like this, you know, so that you can see what we have. This is how to draft a perfect yoke if you are not draping your yoke on your clients. So for the side, you can see it's having the same measurement. So that is it for that. So I'll just go ahead to cut it out, and you have drafted. This is the best guide on drafting a cup corset. So I've gone ahead to cut out every piece and then try to use a masking tape to connect it together so that you can have a better view on how it looks like, or how it's going to come out. Okay, so this is the cup corset, and then I've cut out the dart just like this, and then you can see how I'm placing it on this neck. When you follow the exact instruction on how I drafted this, you're going to have a perfect corset. Okay, so that is it on how to draft a cupped corset with a yoke. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next video, and if you want to make a request, you can as well do that on the comment section. I'm going to do well to do so. All right, thank you and bye for now.